Hello, my name is Mike Wiluan. I'm the director of Orang Ikan.
Okay, tell me a bit. I wrote about the production. So many producers involved, so many countries. So tell me a bit about how this happened.
Yes, my partner Eric Koo, who is a producer of mine, and we've worked together on many projects together. Gorilla was a horror label that we put together to produce Asian flavor, Southeast Asian flavor horror. And we haven't done anything for a while. We did Rumadara, we did, 2359. We've done a few projects together in the past, and we decided that it was time to do another project. So when I started writing, Eric came up with this idea of this creature film, and he said, "Mike, you should just do a creature project." And I've just been finishing my other shows, and I wrote it, and we decided to get into it. And how do we look for partnerships? So first thing we did was apply for the Singapore grant, the Go Global grant, and actually it's under Singapore Film Commission. Sorry. And we were able to secure some financing from that. We then, in the process, obviously looked for distribution. That was the most important thing, a distributing partner. And we were very fortunate to meet up with Fumi and Simon from SE Films, who are based in UK, who really helped us a lot in finding distribution strategy, and participated as well. And together with so we have Japanese investors as well that came on board. We have Singaporean investors and Indonesian sponsors as well. So it kind of became a very, I would say, Asian collaborative effort with UK as well in making this film. Yeah.
So, how much did it cost roughly? Can you say?
I look at. Am I allowed to say how much it costs? 'Cause, yeah. Okay. I would say for a film like this, you would pay usually more. I mean, it would cost more than it costs much less than $2 million US to make. Yes. It was a for a monster film. It's usually the cost goes into the action, the creature, the setting, the locations. But we did what we can to spend the money where it was needed, with the actors, the costume, and then also the logistics. Yeah.
Okay. And can you tell me a bit about the location where it is shot?
We shot the film because the story was it had to be a wild place. It had to be a place that had to have both beauty and danger at the same time. And I wanted to shoot it in Indonesia because Indonesia has so much beautiful locations, but a lot of those locations are very difficult to get to. They'll take days, maybe might be hours from the nearest hospital or a hotel. And we wanted, since our crew was quite large, we wanted to make sure we could accommodate everybody as well. So there was safety, there was logistics. I was comfortable filming in Indonesia because I'm from Indonesia, and I knew the crews would be able to overcome a lot of the challenges that we face in a very physical environment. So the radius of decision making started very wide, and it went down to a much smaller area closer in Java, in a place called Sukabumi, which is 6 hours away from Jakarta. So we were still able to drive from the city, but go into the mountains and the jungles that are relatively untouched. I mean, one of the things that we wanted to make sure was to film in an environment where there was very no human existence, because in the story we arrive at this sort of like mysterious island, and it could be a representative of an island of Indonesia in the Pacific, anywhere that is totally uninhabited, wild, with different geographies, from the beach to the caves to the rivers, and and different types of jungle as well, not just one type. And so we found this place in Sukabumi, which is in like south, actually it's just right on the Indian Ocean, and Pelabuhan Ratu. It was quite extreme, and so we decided that this would be the best place, because within the radius of a few hours we were able to find all these different locations. Yes.
And how was it shooting in there? It seems like a difficult environment to shoot a movie in. Was
Yeah.
it difficult? Yeah.
It was difficult. Ironically, I've been shooting different places over the many years, and one of the things that I've gotten used to was shooting in a studio, where we were able to build everything. You would have all the facilities with you. To get to the studio would be 5 minutes, and it was just easy shooting in a set or a backlot. And I wanted to challenge myself with this new project to go somewhere that would be physically challenging but beautiful in its own way, in nature. So I would say yes, it was. I think it was. The irony is that I wish that I wanted to film. My desire was to film somewhere very different to what I'm used to. And by the time I arrived at these beautiful locations, I was immediately concerned about how long it would take to get to some of these locations. I've been on recce's and technical recce's, and we'd walked places, and we talked about the time, but to get to certain locations. But the reality is that when you have 150 crew, and when you have cameras and lighting, and you have all this equipment, it really dawns upon you that it is an immense human feat. It is a real challenge to bring all this heavy equipment. And there were places that we would film that you'd have to walk for 45 minutes through thick jungle, through rivers, hills and mountains, just to even get to that one location. So it was very challenging, and for me personally, it was not just physical but mental, because you have to start your day very early, very early, to get to the location. By the time you get to the location, it feels like you've already done an expedition to even be. You haven't even started anything yet. To get the cameras in position, whether it was raining, whether we're in a canyon and we're waiting for that light of that sun to come through. You're dealing with wildlife, from snakes to scorpions to huge centipedes and all kinds of things, leeches, and so. You get to that state of mind where you think, I'm so lucky to get a shot, because, this is really so amazing, it's so challenging. So my concern was obviously for my crew and for my actors, but for my crew in Indonesia, a lot of people are very hardy and they're used to this. My other concern was for my actors, whether they have that experience to kind of be so remotely, so shooting in such a remote place, that I didn't want their mental state to be degraded, or to feel concerned that they wouldn't be able to give performance. Because when you think that the nearest hospital is quite far away, when you think that if I fall down here, I have to be carried hours, or I think for actors it's very important to play moments where they're able to be at peace with the character. And that was one of my concerns, and I think that was one of the greatest challenges. And because we didn't shoot everything in sequence, we had to go to different location, and I would look at my script and I'd talk to my actors and say, okay, this is the moment after you did this and you find this and this. And while I was talking to the actors, the raging sounds of the water from the river would be rushing past, would be in the middle of the river. There'll be no place dry to stand, and you'd be talking through the emotions of the character in this crazy, wild environment. So that's why I think it was that was challenging. It was physical, mental, but the craft of the challenge of the craft in being able to set up your technical equipment, getting a shot, framing, to even talking to your actors, it was very challenging. I would say one of the most challenging projects I've made in my career. Yeah.
And can you tell me a bit about this legend that gives the movie its name? Well,
Orang Ikan?
Yeah.
Yes. Orang Ikan is more of a Malay folklore. It's people of because the Malay fishermen and Bugis and Malay, they're sea people, and they live along the coast and mostly in the Riau provinces, and they're dotted. Some Malay communities are dotted across different parts of Indonesia, and people have always talked about finding very human-like fish creatures, and sometimes they mistake it for this creature called animal called dugong, which is very similar to like a small whale, but it doesn't have human qualities. But over the many generations, there's always been this myth about a human sea creature, and so that was always talked about, and it hasn't really been made into popular culture like films, like a Asian sea creature, a Southeast Asian sea creature. We haven't really done anything like that, so that was an interesting motivation. But one other interesting story that we found out was in World War II, there was a Japanese outpost in the east of Indonesia in K Islands, and there was a group of Japanese soldiers who saw like humans swimming in the sea, and when they investigated, they disappeared back into the sea, and they continually saw these humanoids. They were sort of like half fish, half man, and they talked to the local villagers, and the villagers confirmed that there was indeed a creature out there, but was half human, half fish. So this was it was documented. These stories sort of like were documented, and they actually saw these creatures, but no photos were actually taken. And so when it happened during that time in World War II, it just made me believe that this would be so appropriate for the time, for the era, to have a story like this to be told.
And tell me a bit about the action in the film. How did it work? Who is the action director, and how did you work with him?
So we choreographed different parts of the action scene, and so we did a choreograph board with my stunt coordinators, and we did this all in Jakarta. But we didn't have enough time to choreograph everything because one of our actors came because they were committed on projects. Dean and Callum weren't able to make it so early on that I had sort of like a month or two with them to go into the studio and do everything. So we didn't have that much time, and when we did it obviously in the studio, but the suit took time to arrive. So we because the suit was made in LA by Alan Holt, and it was a great suit. But by the time it got from Los Angeles to Indonesia through customs, through everything else, it was delayed. So we had very little time to interact with the action and the Alan Maxton who played the creature in the suit. So we had a lot of dry runs in the studio, but there were times where you think we just have to have a structure and a strategy, and we have to see the limitations of the suit, because the suit was silicon and rubber, and it was restrictive. Not the creature. The actor couldn't move as dynamically as a human would, right? And on top of that, we were filming in real caves, in real jungles. We were filming in real rivers, and so all the action had to take place in these real environments where the suit had to be worn. And imagine, for example, shooting in a cave. So we shot in a real cave, and that was a dangerous cave because there was very tight spots, and it opened up into big spots, and there were rocks everywhere. There were sharp things everywhere, and you had an actor in a creature suit, and he couldn't see properly. He could only see a certain amount, and the cave was dark, and then you had an action scene that was taking place in a cave, and it was really hot and humid. I mean, you're talking about 36, 35 degree with the degrees Celsius together with 100% humidity, wearing a suit, and we had this cold cooling system, like a water system that Alan was able to cool himself down with. But we had to stop every sequence. We had to stop and start, and I would say the process was challenging because we could never do anything completely until it was time to shoot. Right? It wasn't a time where we had the suit, we had we had a studio, we had everyone ready with the props and everything. It was never that. We had to wait until the actual roll camera to do that final sequence. And some of the additional action sequences were some of them were choreographed down to the T. Some of them were additional fly of the moment, right? Add-ons, right? And so I credit my actors for being able to be very flexible and making that happen. Yeah.
And can you tell me a bit about how the casting worked for the film?
Yes. Well, when I wrote the film, I imagined, or I'd always imagined how Saito would be as a character. He would be very, he would have this charisma, have this outlook in life that is very, he was conscious of his environment. He was contemplative, philosophical even. Someone who thought about the consequences of what he has done, has guilt on his shoulders. So someone who would be able to carry that off with a sensitivity. And Bronson was the exact opposite. Someone who'd be very brash, who would wear his heart on his sleeve, and who would just say what he thought. Someone who wouldn't be as far thinking, but someone who would be more short thinking, like just very instinctive, right? He's a very instinctive man, very quick to temper, very, very emotional. And so these two people of their opposites, and I was conscious that we had to cast for the right temperament, and so we, when I was introduced to Dean, and Dean read the script. He really liked it, and we spoke on Zoom, and I mentioned to him the style of character, and he took to it really well, and he made some suggestions about some backstories about how that would help him get into character, and I really enjoyed working with Dean on the process. And with Callum, it was the same. It was, when I met Callum, I just wanted Callum to be Callum, because he was just so, I would say, on the spot with who he was. It was just so natural. With, like, as soon as I talked about this character and his name, Bronson, he was already like, yeah, and he had this slightly northern accent, and I just thought,
He looks like a Bronson.
he looks like a Bronson, yeah. So he looked like it, and that's why you need to, match the names, and they got to live up to the expectation of what that name would mean, and yeah. So Callum was after that call with Callum, it was a very great feeling. And when you walk away from interviews with your cast, and you know that you have the right person, and you know you have the commitment, and their headspace is in that same frame as yours, your work is cut out for you. It's much easier to work with actors in that way. Yeah.
And tell me a bit, for me, like, the scenes they fight the monsters are impressive, but for me the most impressive action scene is the one the two fight on the beach in the beginning. So tell me a bit about that scene.
So I mean, what I really enjoyed working with Callum and Dean was that, there were moments where we would look at the scene and say, look, we could do this in short segments over the few days, but we're going to have continuity issues because of light, the low tide, the high tide, the color of the beach, the color of everything is going to change on it. We got to do this maybe, because of time, and I didn't have a lot of time to do that. And I told the guys, I said, like, your choreography? Let's just do the whole thing. Like, just do the whole thing. And we had their stand-ins, their doubles, who did from afar. They did, so there was one wide shot, and they watched the stunt doubles do the whole thing. And then Dean turned to, Callum and Dean, they were looking at each other, and I said, how about we do this, the whole thing, right? Just do the whole thing, but you might have to do it 3 or 4 times. You're not going to be really tired, but we just, I think it's more natural that you just have that tiredness, that anger, and just go through the whole motion, because you have that beach, and I was worried the tide will go down and down, and in the next few hours, it would, when the tide was here, it would be gone. We wouldn't have that water sequence. So yeah, so they were great. They really they just really went at each other, and they weren't scared at all about certain things. I mean, we tried at the beginning with because the chain was the most difficult part. When you fight with a chain, I mean, you're always going to be close together, and that was the physics of this fight. It was, you couldn't be further than 2 meters from each other. And when we first tried with, we had like a rubber plastic chain that would be more safe. But that kept breaking every time. It was like every time, because the fight was so violent. This thing just like kept snapping. So they just said, "Look, let's just use the real one. Let's just use the real chain." So it was like they were literally shackled up with these iron chains, and it held on, and it made it more realistic, and they felt the weight of that chain. So everything that they moved around was very yeah, it made it more realistic. So I mean, even going, we had a lot of safety concerns because especially when they're in the water, you can't predict when the surf comes in, whether there's a big tide that comes in, whether Callum or Dean will suddenly be totally in the water. If they, we're frightened of many things that could happen there. So we constantly had to watch over. We had a big team watching every step of the way. Yeah.
So, trick question: if the fight continued, who would have won in the end?
I think, as you can see from the fight, both of them have tricks up their sleeve, right? I mean, both of them have certain moves. I wouldn't say that because, like Bronson or Callum has a more aggressive street fight style, and Saito Dean has a more like because obviously Bushido and learning in the military the principles of martial arts. I would say that the discipline for Saito would have been more thinking forward about how he would then defeat Bronson, whereas Bronson would keep on going until he ran out of energy, or Saito would. So they both. I would say that if the fight carried on a bit longer, I would say if something wouldn't have happened just then and there, I'm sure Saito would have found another way to get him off. Yeah.
Okay, good. And tell me, other plans to open in Indonesia, or?
Yes. I mean, we would like to open in Indonesia. I mean, Indonesia is a very interesting market now with horror, but there's a lot of great horror movies that are out, but there's not a lot of monster horror. And a lot of the horror that we do in Indonesia is based on very popular folklores, more spiritual, and it's changing. The market's evolving, and I think to watch content that has more kind of a universal theme, or something that has like an actual creature, like a real creature feature is not often that we get in Indonesia. And because it's filmed in Indonesia, there's been a lot of calls for it to release. So we're looking for a release date, and hopefully we would get a release date soon. Yeah.
And how is the situation right now in the Indonesian movie industry, let's say?
I would say Indonesian movie industry is doing very well right now. It's there was a time that it languished, and Indonesian movies are really growing after the pandemic. What was interesting was seeing everybody come back out to the cinemas. And in Indonesia, going to the cinema is a very social event. You go with friends and family, and it's usually big groups that go and fill up the cinemas. And what has been happening is that there's been a lot more screens that have been coming up all over Indonesia. So more screens. I mean, Indonesia is one of the most underscreened countries in the world, compared obviously to the US or China or India. But it has one of the largest populations in the world. So there's huge opportunities there. And now that we have more operators in Indonesia, more and more screens are coming up. And the movie culture has diversified, so that there's domestic films, there's international films, but there's also art films and films that are becoming more, I would say, acceptable for young Indonesians to watch. Like, it's a combination of conceptual films, right? Films that are, whether it might be sci-fi, heist films, or films that we don't usually see in traditional Indonesian culture, something that could be more fantastical. So it's slowly being accepted, and it's nice to see, because it allows content creators to think of something different and know that your audience would accept it. And obviously, Indonesian films have gone through that revival because of different filmmakers. We've had great filmmakers who've done great work over the years, especially in festivals, the festival circuit, and just also more recently with the renaissance of action and horror as well, and that's really helped Indonesia in its industry. Yeah.
And last question, I guess, any plans for a new project after this? What are you working on next?
I am working in December. December and January. I'm in prep for my next film, which is Lost in Melati 2. So I did the first one, which was a movie and a series, and my and this one it will be a sequel to that. So I'm working on that's my next project in the first quarter of next year. Yes.
Okay. Good. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.